are now on record. We're learning Sanhedrin Daf Gimel Amud Bet, and we are now just in the point where we're discussing why the pasuk uses the word Elohim instead of the word Shofet. So our shomer, our guardian, comes to the Bet Din, and he makes an oath that he himself did not misappropriate this article that the person deposited with him. And the pasuk says, "V'nikrav bal habayit el ha'Elohim." And as Johnny Halpern pointed out, that appears to be a strange use of the word Elohim. We know that most of the time Elohim means God. Here it means the judge. So the Gemarah is asking, Rabbi Yoshia could say to you, if it's true that we don't derive anything from that first use, why did the pasuk not say "V'nikrav bal habayit el hashofet"? Why did he not use the expression for judge, the normal expression that we would use, which is hashofet, the judge? Says the Gemarah, "My el ha'Elohim." Why does it use this expression Elohim? Shma mina leminyana. So Rabbi Yoshia would say, because it uses this strange expression, which is what Johnny called it, because it uses this unusual expression, it's not the normal situation where we don't derive something from the first usage. We can derive something from the first usage in this case because it's such a peculiar expression. We could easily have used a more regular expression, the expression of shofet. The pasuk did not use that. The pasuk used ha'Elohim, and therefore, says Rabbi Yoshia, we can use that to derive our three judges. Okay, good answer. Good answer. You'd say, okay, 1-0, 15 love to Rabbi Yoshia. Now, Rabbi Yonatan is serving back now. We give him an opportunity. The Rabbi Yonatan and Rabbi Yonatan, question mark, what would he say about all this? Why does he say that the pasuk uses the expression ha'Elohim instead of hashofet? What would he say? Lishna ta'alma nokat. Nah, it's not an unusual expression. It's an expression that people use. It's an expression, lishna, which comes from the word, same word as lashon, which means language or tongue. Lishna da'alma, there's our word for olam again. It's a word of the world. Nokat that was mentioned. It's nothing special, he says. Kida imri anish. It's what people say. Man itle dina likrav legabay dayana. Man, people say if you've got an issue, then go to the judge, and it's just another word for the judge. So Rabbi Yonatan does not accept the premise of Rabbi Yoshia that the word Elohim is a strange word. First of all, Leon, and then Julia.
I just wanted to point out, if it's correct, that if you're talking about God, you don't put the hey at the beginning. You say to God. But when you say ha Elohim, you never say to the God. You say ha Elohim clearly refers to a different meaning from God.
Okay.
Would you accept that?
I'm not sure. Where's David Marks? David Marks, help me out here. Is there anywhere in? I think there is, but it doesn't strike. It doesn't come to my mind. Where do we find in the Torah, please, where Hashem is referred to as Ha Elohim?
You know where that is, Muhammad? What? Where God is referred to as Ha Elohim?
Anything spring to mind, David Marks?
Yeah.
Yes, me. I can't get a picture. I can speak.
Yes, Michael.
Yes, it's in the Al-Qaeda. Ha Elohim Nisa Abraham.
Ah, there you go. Thank you, Michael. Excellent. There
Right.
you are. Your theory is debunked. Good try.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Julia.
Mine was a question. The rabbis came from all over the place to meet and congregate and discuss. would these two rabbis maybe have come from totally different areas where one was customary and one was not?
That's possible. I'm just having a look in our. I'm just having a look over here. If you look over here, there's a little bit here about the personalities of Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yonatan. If you look in the bit of Rabbi Yonatan, the fourth line down, Rabbi Yonatan and his colleague Rabbi Yoshia.
Would you say that the oil?
Rabbi
Would you say that oil?
So it looks like they were both in the same, out of the same mold.
Yeah.
1 second, Howard.
Would it be linked to your comment that the complainant is making an oath? Sorry, the Bailey is making an oath before God, so it's transmitted directly to God, to Hashem.
That is definitely the inference from the use of the word Elohim as a judge. But there are other places also in the Torah where a judge is referred to that, and it's the same thing. When you are standing in front of a judge, you are what even in today's today's society, what you take out a chumash and you make an oath, or you affirm, or you promise to say the truth in front of Hashem. So you're absolutely right. The use of the word Elohim as judge, I think, is deliberate to invoke the idea that don't just think that if you tell a fib or a lie, you're telling it to that human being over there, even if he looks like he's, fancy with a shaitel on and all the stuff. It's not just him, it's actually Ha-Elohim, the God.
You call the judge in England, you call him my lord.
Okay, my lord.
Out of respect.
Okay, yeah. So, I think that's absolutely right. That is the usage. Somebody else had their hand up a minute ago. Who was it? Nobody else. Oh, Elaine, yes, Elaine.
I just wanted you to mute Nachum. Sorry, he's not been muted after he asked a question. I could hear him talking to Nachum. Sorry.
Okay, Nachum is now muted. Okay.
Nothing personal.
Okay, right. So, Rabbi Yonatan, he just says, where are we now? Let's go back to where we were. So he says, it's just, Rabbi Yonatan says, I'm not impressed with that explanation that we could have used the word shofet. The word Elohim is a perfectly normal expression to use for a judge, says Rabbi Yonatan, and therefore I reject your opinion on that. So then we ask another question, and that is, the Rabbi Yoshia, let lay beit din noter. Well, hang on a minute. If Rabbi Yoshia here, does he not also agree that we can't have an even number of judges in a beit din, that we have to have what is called a beit din noter? Noter means to lean or to incline. So a beit din noter means a beit din which has to lean to one side or another. In other words, there has to be a majority. So it has to be an odd number. The opposite of a beit din noter is a beit din shakul, which comes from the word shekel or mishkal, which means weighted. So it's even. So shakul means even. So a beit din noter is like that or that, and a beit din shakul is even. So does Rabbi Yoshia not agree that we must have a beit din noter, an odd number of judges? And the Gemarah brings a proof from a breita. Remember, I told you what a breita was. The word breita means is Aramaic, and it means outside. A breita are rabbinic teachings from the time of the Mishnah, which never made it into the final editing of the Mishnah. Howard, you're an author. There must be lots of material that never made it into the final draft of your book. There must have been lots of stuff that you had that you could have put in, and you decided at some point or another that got cut from the final draft, right?
Of course, plenty.
Okay, so that's what happened with the Mishnah. The Mishnah, written by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he wrote down the Mishnah, what's called redacted the Mishnah, and he had to choose what went in and what went out. And the stuff that didn't quite make it was not just thrown away, it was stored away somewhere else. And these were called breita, a breitot, a breita. And they don't have quite as much weight. They don't carry quite as much weight as things that finally made it into the Mishnah. But a breita is a strong proof. So we've got a question against Rabbi Yoshia. Does he not agree that we need an odd number of judges? Vahatanya, that word over here, vahatanya, you'll see that over and over again. That means, have we not learnt in a breita? Rabbi Eliezer, beno shel Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer. This man, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, says, Ma Talmud Loma linatot acharei Rabim lahatot. It's telling us that there is a pasuk in Shemot 23, verse 2, which says, the exact verse says as follows: Lo tiyeh acharei Rabim leraot. Do not go after evil people. Do not go after the majority to do evil. He's talking here, the last bit of the pasuk, which is quoted here, acharei rabim lahatot, means you have to go out according to the majority to convict. So this pasuk clearly says that you have to have a majority. V'hatorah amra aseh lecha bet din noteh. And so, surely, says the Gemara now, according to this breita, surely the fact that we have to have a majority to convict means that we must have an odd number of judges. Surely that's the case. So this is a question now against Rabbi Yoshia. So how is Rabbi Yoshia going to answer this question? Because it seems at the moment that he is not, if he is not going to say that there is an odd number of judges, how is he going to explain this pasuk of that a conviction can only be with a majority? So this is the answer. Savar la Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, I do not accept that halacha. I do not accept that we need an odd number of judges. And I'll tell you something else. He says, I've got a support. I have a support. I hold according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda. By the way, we have just mentioned two of the three rabbis that we mentioned yesterday in the shiur on Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. You'll remember, just as an aside, you remember the story where they were sat around and Rabbi Yehuda said, what have the Romans ever done for us? And he was very complimentary. Rabbi Yossi remained silent, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was very critical of the Romans, and that's why he had to run away into his cave. We've just mentioned a minute ago Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Yossi Hagalili. That was the same Rabbi Yossi we mentioned yesterday, who remained silent. And this Rabbi Yehuda is the same Rabbi Yehuda that was complimentary about the Romans. That's just as an aside, that we have the same personalities that we were discussing yesterday. So, says Rabbi Yoshia, I hold like Rabbi Yehuda, de Amar, Shivin, he holds 70. Now, what are they talking about here, 70? We're talking about 3. Rabbi Yehuda here is talking, and it tells us clearly what he's talking about. And he's quoting our Mishnah, Ditnan. Now, remember I said to you before, Hatanya, Tanya refers to a breita, those bits that ended up on the cutting room floor. Ditnan, this word here, this always means we have learned in a Mishnah. And Mishnah has more weight, carries more weight than a breita. So Rabbi Yehuda says in our Mishnah, Sanhedrin Gdola, the big, great Sanhedrin, Haita Shel Shivim Ve'echad. That's what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah said we have 71 judges in the great Sanhedrin. What we forgot to notice, or what we didn't forget to notice, what we forgot to take care of, that there was a dissenting opinion. That dissenting opinion is Rabbi Yehuda, who says Shivim. He says it's not 71 in the Great Sanhedrin. He says it's 70. Now, who can remember where we derived 70 or 71 from? Who can remember? Where did we get that from? Any offers? Why 70 for the Great Sanhedrin or 71? Julia?
Was it something to do with the number of towns that everybody would have a representative from each
No.
tribes?
No, it wasn't. No, but you're sort of on the right line in that when they did the spies, they had a representative from each tribe. And when they had the Chanukat Habayit, they had a representative from each tribe. And in fact, these people all did come from separate tribes. But
isn't it from
Leon?
God told Moses to take 70 elders. With him, it adds.
Okay,
so that
excellent.
becomes 71.
Correct. Okay, that's exactly where it comes from. David Marks, what's the pasuk? Thank you very much. Bamidbar, can't catch you out yet this morning. Ba'alotcha, it's in Bamidbar, chapter 11, verse 15. And this is when the complaining Jews had said to Moshe Rabbeinu, we want meat. We want meat. We're sick of this mon stuff that comes down every day. We want a shtick fleish. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, well, where on earth am I going to get meat from for all you lot? And he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I've had it with these people. I can't take it anymore. I cannot handle these lot anymore. Where am I going to get meat for all this lot? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, calm down a minute, don't get excited, we'll sort it all out. And the verse says, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Hashem says to Moshe, Es bali shivim ish miziknei Yisrael, gather to me 70 men from the elders of Israel, Asher Yadata, whom you know, Kihem Ziknei Ha'am, that they are elders of the people, Veshotrav and their officers, Velakachta Otam et Oel Moed, and take them to the tent of meeting, Vityatsu Sham Imach, and they will stand there with you. So that was HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, okay, you don't have to deal with it on your own. I'm going to give you 70 elders to help you out in looking after these people. As it so happens, they actually don't end up doing anything, these 70 elders. We never actually hear of them again, actually doing anything, but that's another issue. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu's solution was that Moshe Rabbeinu gathers these 70 elders and he stands them in front of the tent of meeting together with Moshe himself. So the Mishnah, right at the beginning, derives over here where my pointer is, Sanhedrin Gedola Hayta Shel Shivim Ve'echad. The Mishnah says it's 71 because of the 70 judges plus Moshe. And that makes sense because the Pasuk says, stand them there with you. In other words, that they will be together. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Moshe is not included. Rabbi Yehuda says 70 judges. Okay, so Rabbi Yoshia, who we are challenging, we say, well, surely you agree that it has to be an odd number of judges. He says, no, not necessarily. Maybe I hold like Rabbi Yehuda. And we know for sure that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't necessarily require an odd number of judges, because Rabbi Yehuda has said explicitly in the Mishnah that the Sanhedrin Gedolah, the Great Sanhedrin, should consist of 70. And as we all know, 70 is not an odd number. So Ema. Okay, so all right. That's a theory at the moment. 1 second, Michael. Can't hear you, Michael.
Oh, sorry. You said 1 second. Does the expression 70 men of the Great Assembly, does that mean the Sanhedrin? Or is it different?
That's Anshe Knesset HaGdolah,
Yeah.
the men of the Great Assembly. There was 120 in the Knesset HaGdolah. The Anshe Knesset HaGdolah were 120, which is why, by the way, that we have 120 members of our Knesset. Our Knesset is based on the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. It's based on the ancient assembly that they had. The ruling assembly was of 120 men, and therefore our Knesset in modern Israel has 120 members. So the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, which was the legislative arm of the people, was 120, which is also not an odd number, but it wasn't 70. Yes, Howard.
May I ask a question? Would there ever be an appeal, a case that this is sent to the Sanhedrin in which all 70 or 71 judges would sit in judgment?
Yes. When we've finished, if you go up the page and have a look at the Mishnah, the whole of the first Mishnah. Remember, at the moment we're still on the first three words of the Mishnah, explaining that in the Gemara. Eventually we'll come to it, but you'll have a look in the Mishnah. It tells you the cases where the Great Sanhedrin had to sit, and these were basically cases of national importance. So cases, for example, for an Ir Hanidachat, the city which was to be destroyed because it was full of idol worshippers. Cases of national importance were judged by the Great Sanhedrin. So yes, there were cases when they all sat. Okay, so where are we? So let's say, says the Gemara, let's say that we accept that Rabbi Yeshua holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and he doesn't necessarily need an odd number of judges. Okay, so now the Gemara says, well, actually, hang on a minute. Is this necessarily the case with every court? Maybe Rabbi Yehuda, who Rabbi Yeshua is relying on, maybe he holds that it can be an even number only with the Great Sanhedrin, who says that applies to the lower courts as well. It would be logical, but not necessarily. And that's what the Gemara asks now. Ema, the Shamat le Rabbi Yehuda b'Sanhedrin Gdola, dichtiv kra'eh. Maybe, the Gemara says, maybe Rabbi Yehuda said his opinion. Who's got feedback there? Derek, I think. Okay. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda said his halacha that it's 70 only with regard to the Great Sanhedrin, because there are specific verses which refer to that, and we just read them. There is that specific verse that says, "Gather to me 70 elders and place them in front of the Ohel Moed with you." So maybe, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda's not here to ask, but maybe Rabbi Yehuda only says his opinion that it doesn't have to be an odd number, because there is a specific biblical verse which indicates that. But Bisha'ar Bey Dina Mi Shamat Le? Question mark. With the rest of the courts, Bey Dina, Bey means Bet, Dina, obviously Bet Din. With the rest of the courts, Mi Shamat Le? Have you ever heard him say such a thing? From the word Shema, to listen. Have you ever heard him say anything like that? So that's the question. And then the Gemara says, okay, V'chi tema loshna. Okay, let's say he doesn't make a difference. Let's say he says, no, it does apply to all courts. There's no difference between the Great Sanhedrin and the lower courts. How about this? He says, V'hatanan, have we not learnt in a Mishnah? You always know when it says V'hatanan or V'hatanya that it's coming up with a challenge. Have we not learnt in a Mishnah? Meaning, you think you've got it now, I've got something on you now. Have we not learnt in a Mishnah? Smichat zekenim v'arifat egla bishlosha. The smicha, the laying of hands, the smicha on the animals done by the sages, va'arifat egla, and the case of egla arufa, where they had to throw the animal down the cliff. We spoke about it some months ago. This is the case where there is a dead body found between two cities, and they have to measure it, and then the elders of the town nearest to the where the corpse was found has to go through this procedure. That when they do the measuring of where it is between two towns, that has to be done with 3 judges, according to our Mishnah. Divrei Rabbi Shimon. That was the words of Rabbi Shimon. And now we have a full house, because Rabbi Shimon is the 3rd one of the rabbis that we were talking about yesterday. So we now have the opinions now of all of those 3 rabbis that we introduced yesterday when we were discussing Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So that was the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. But Rabbi Yehuda, here we are, he disagrees, and he says 5. He says 5. Wait a minute. Hang on a minute. How does that fit? We're trying to prove that Rabbi Yehuda does not need an odd number of judges. So how does this help us? Because Rabbi Yehuda says 5. When I last looked, 5 was an odd number. So how does this help us? We've not finished yet. Ve'amrina, and we will say, my tama de Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say 5? Rabbi Shimon said 3. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say 5? How does he derive that? He derives it from the verse in, over here you can see it's in Vayikra, chapter 4. It's in the Parasha of Vayikra, and the Pasuk says, V'samchu ziknei ha'ida et yedehem al rosh hapar lifnei Hashem. We're talking about a korban chatat. V'samchu, and they shall lean. Ziknei ha'ida, the elders of the people. So who shall lean? The elders of the people shall lean. Et yedehem, their hands. Al rosh hapar, on the head of the animal. That was the procedure they had to do. Now, the Tanaim of the Mishnah and the Amaraim of the Gemarah were pedantic to the extreme, making Michael Leaf look as if he really didn't care at all. Okay, they were even more pedantic than Michael Leaf on language. And what they derive from this pasuk is this. Let's go back to the Gemara. Our verse says, V'samchu ziknei ha'ida. So Rabbi Yehuda says, the word v'samchu, and they shall lean, is in the plural. They shall lean. The minimum number of plural is 2. So that's 2. V'samchu, that implies Shnayim, 2. Ziknei ha'ida, the elders, plural, of the congregation, that's another 2. Ve'ein, so that means 4. Ve'ein beit din shakol mosifin aleihen od echad. And we can't have a beit din shakol, so we have to add another one. Okay, so from there, what do we learn? We learn that Rabbi Yehuda himself does not accept an even number of judges in these lower courts. So now what's Rabbi Yeshua going to do? Rabbi Yeshua, who was trying to tell us that you don't need that, brought Rabbi Yehuda as a proof for him, because Rabbi Yehuda said you can have 70, you must have 70 for the Beit Din Gadol, the Sanhedrin Gadol. But now we've proven that Rabbi Yehuda himself does not hold that you have to have, that it can be an even number, only with the Beit Din Gadol, the Sanhedrin Gadol. So Rabbi Yoshia has now got his back against the wall because he thought he could bring Rabbi Yehuda as a proof. And we have now shown that Rabbi Yehuda does not hold like that. So what's Rabbi Yeshua going to say now? Yes, Michael Leaf.
I don't get this. Is this just going by us and we're accepting, or that they're accepting, that when it said the elders and the word their hands, it's referring to different people? It doesn't make sense. You say their hands, at least in English, sorry, pedantic. If you say their hands as a pronoun, you must have had a noun beforehand to which that refers.
Okay, so what they're saying is, V'samchu ziknei ha'ida. I'm not quite sure how else they could have said it personally, so I understand your question. But what the Mishnah is saying is that Rabbi Yehuda derives his 5 from the double plural. V'samchu, he takes 2. I agree with you. I agree with you. It's a bit difficult because you'd have, in order for him to do that, he would have to come and say and show me how you could say that without using the 2 plurals. You could say the samchu et yedehem, but then you would have to say, well, who's they? They will lean their hands. I suppose it could be like this, Michael. I think this may be it. Have a look at the verse before. I'll read it to you. Here we're talking, by the way, we're talking about a situation where the whole people have done something wrong on the basis of a incorrect judgment from a Bet Din. So the Bet Din, for example, said, let's say something crazy, but the Bet Din said you're allowed to eat chametz on Pesach, right? And everybody then went and ate chametz on Pesach on the basis that the Bet Din said you could do so. It then turns out that the Bet Din made a mistake, and everybody now has done a big aveira. The Bet Din has to bring a communal offering, as it were, to atone for everybody's sin that they caused. That's the case that we're talking about. So for Hikrivu HaKahal, the congregation will bring this Par Ben Bakar, this young animal, lechatat, as a sin offering. Veheviu oto lifnei ohel moed, and they bring it in front of the ohel moed. V'samchu ziknei ha'ida. Now, here we were talking before that the ziknei ha'ida are the ones that had made the error. So I think, Michael, that you could possibly say you could have done without the expression ziknei ha'ida, and you could have just put v'samchu et yidehem, and it would have been understood that it would be the ziknei ha'ida who would do the leaning of their hands. I think that is how Rabbi Yehuda would explain that. I think it's a little bit of a stretch, a little bit of a dray, as we say. But nevertheless, Rabbi Yehuda was Rabbi Yehuda, and that's what he said. But I think that's possibly what he's getting at, is that we could have managed without those words, and we would have understood it.
Well, can I ask a question about the great Sanhedrin? If it were 70 and they made a decision 35 to 35, what would be the verdict that would come out of that particular Sanhedrin if they really were 70?
Innocent.
Innocent, okay.
Because we have the pasuk that says, Achrei Rabim Lahatot. You can only convict on a majority.
So maybe
but
it's
as
better.
As it so happens, Nachum, that never happened because the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha was that it was 71. But had it been 70, that would have been an acquittal.
But wouldn't it show more if there was 68, and 72? Wouldn't it show a better?
Then it would have been a greater acquittal. Acquittal's an acquittal.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So here we have now got Rabbi Yoshia as it seems, on the ropes, because he brought Rabbi Yehuda as a proof that we don't need an odd number of judges, and our Mishnah has shown that we do need an odd number, because he says 5. He brings 2 from V'samchu, 2 from Ziknei, and he doesn't want a Bet Din Shakul, so he adds another one and he makes 5, thereby proving that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that in the lower courts he does require an odd number of judges. So what's Rabbi Yoshia going to say now? Okay, so now this is the kind of answer that used to sort of wind me up a little bit when I was less mature and, believe it or not, even more fiery than I am now. This answer of the Gemara goes like this: Rabbi Yeshua adifa mit Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, you're right. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda, but he goes even further. From the word adif. Adif in modern Hebrew, ani ma'adif means I prefer. So Rabbi Yeshua adifa min Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yoshia's opinion is preferable to Rabbi Yehuda's because he goes further. De'ilu Rabbi Yehuda b'Sanhedrin Gedola hu deletele. Rabbi Yehuda does not accept the principle that a court must be composed of an odd number of judges. Habisha beidina itle, but with the rest of them he does. But Rabbi Yeshua bisha beidina nami leitle. He holds Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yoshia holds further than Rabbi Yehuda, and he goes further and says all of the batei din, all of the levels of court do not require an odd number. Okay, all right. So you'll say to me, well, what was the point of bringing Rabbi Yehuda in the first place then? If he's only going to pick and choose which of Rabbi Yehuda's opinions he's going to keep, you can't pick and choose. Either you go like Rabbi Yehuda or you don't. And he says, no, that's not the case. I can't pick and choose. I will take my principle from Rabbi Yehuda. I'll take the principle of the Sanhedrin Gedolah that does not need an odd number, and I will take that principle further. So I'm allowed to base my opinion on Rabbi Yehuda, but I don't have to go exactly like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, I always thought that was a bit of a cop-out, really. It wasn't something that really satisfied my my inquisitive mind, really. And in fact, the Gemara doesn't really like it either, because the Gemara now asks another question of Rabbi Yoshia. And so he says, okay, in that case, Rabbi Yoshia, we understand that you hold that a bet din can be a bet din shakul. You can have an even number of judges on a bet din. So now the Gemara asks Nachum Jacobs his question. There you are, Nachum. You're quoted here in the Gemara. The Gemara says, doesn't quote you by name, but it means you. Ve'ela hai linatot. Wait a minute. We've got this pasuk that says, acharei rabim. Where's the verse? Linatot. Yes, you can't. You need to go after a majority. Do not incline after a multitude to do evil. What's a pasuk again, David Marks, please?
Lintot acharei rabim l'hatot.
Lintot acharei rabim l'reyot. That's it. Lintot acharei rabim l'reyot. Do not go after the majority for evil. So if you don't go after the majority for evil, what that means is you can't convict without a majority, because it's evil to convict. You know, we're talking here about somebody's going to lose something. Either they're going to lose money, or they're going to lose property, or they're going to lose their life. So what's Rabbi Yoshia going to do? There's a pasuk that says you've got to have a majority to convict. So Nachum's question, what happens if we have 35-35? We're in trouble here. So how does he get out of this, Rabbi Yoshia? And he says, so my Ovidle, what's he going to do with that? Good question. And he wriggles out of that by saying, very clever this answer, Mokim la bedinei nefashot. That pasuk where it says to incline after a multitude to pervert justice, as it says here, what it means is you have to have a majority to convict, to make something bad, to do something bad, is referring only to a capital case. Only to a case where somebody's going to lose their life. So you'll say to me, well, why? Why? And this is where the brilliance of the Gemarah comes in. Because the answer is like this. When it says, Acharei Rabim, Acharei, what's the pasuk? Lintot Acharei Rabim L'Reyot, do not incline to a majority to do evil, or you must incline to do it. You must have a majority to do evil. What's this evil? The evil is taking somebody's life. So you'll say to me, well, what about the other cases? That's also evil. I'll be losing my money. But that's not evil, is it? You might be losing your money, but the other guy, he's gaining your money. So from his perspective, that's not a bad verdict. That's a good verdict. There can only be one type of verdict, which is a bad verdict, and that's where it's a capital case. Because on every other verdict, if I go to court with somebody and I lose, that's bad for me, but it's good for him. So they're not. So that's not that verse where it says l'reyot for evil, says Rabbi Yoshia, can only apply to capital cases. And it doesn't apply to monetary cases. Julia's shaking her head.
Well, I mean, you haven't covered going to prison. Nobody else benefits, do they? It's a criminal offence. So it's not just losing your life. I was also going to say it's quite interesting because last week we were all on the side of Rabbi Yoshia and not Rabbi Yonatan, who came off quite badly last week. And it's funny how the scales have turned. Okay,
let me answer the second part first, and that is the Gemarah. That is the back and forth of Gemarah. You think you've got him, and then he comes back at you with something else that you hadn't thought of, and then the other guy's on the back foot, and now we've got to find out what the other fellow's got to do. That is the classic Gemarah way, and what we try to do, what the Gemarah tries to do at the end of it all, is to converge their opinions. So that we don't have any disagreement. We try and find a situation where they will actually agree. But before we ever get to that, and sometimes we don't get to that, we have this tennis match back and forth, and that's exactly what you described. The first part of going to prison, there is actually in the Torah law, there is no concept of sending people to prison. That is a rabbinic institution. According to the strict Torah law d'oraita, there are no cases where you actually go to prison. You're either it's either a capital case, if it's punishment or lashes, but there's no prison. But they're talking. So that's his answer there. How he gets out of that. Okay, so this is a good place to stop. Not really, but it will be too long to go further on, so we'll stop there for this week, and we'll carry on. We'll do a little recap next time, just where we got to, and then we'll carry on next time. So let's just recap what we've said today. First of all, we've said that Rabbi Yoshia holds like Rabbi Yehuda. We brought a proof that Rabbi Yehuda does not necessarily hold like that he needs an odd number for cases, because he holds that the 70 people that Moshe Rabbeinu brought in front of the Ohel Moed did not include himself, and therefore 70 in the Sanhedrin Gedolah. We then showed from another Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is not entirely consistent, because in the lower courts he required 5 judges, 2 from a plural of leaning, 2 from a plural of the elders, plural, and he didn't like the idea of having 4, so he added on a 5th, thereby proving that at least in the lower courts, he holds that you have to have an odd number. Rabbi Yoshia initially seemed to hold like Rabbi Yehuda, but then when Rabbi Yehuda's opinion didn't quite fit with what he said, no, I don't hold like him on that. I only hold him like on the other bit. He was then challenged what he's going to do about a majority, and he said, no, a majority only counts for capital cases. We only need that pasuk is only referring to capital cases. Stanley.
I want to ask you a question. Every time we go to any Gemarah, it's like you said, it's a tennis ball match, back and forth, in not coming to agreement at the end of this pasuk or in the end of this Mishnah. Are we going always with Shulchan Aruch on any issues that we have?
Right. So to answer that question, I need to give you a little background of where the Shulchan Aruch came from. The Shulchan Aruch was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo in the 16th century. And why is the Shulchan Aruch so widely known and important? It was not the first code of Jewish law that was written. There were many codes of Jewish law that were written before the Shulchan Aruch. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch is based on previous codexes of Jewish law. Each one of these used the Gemara and the Mishnah and the Torah as a basis of coming to the halacha. And mainly it used the Gemara. Because what they did was, in all the rabbis that made a codex of Jewish law, so you have the Shulchan Aruch, you have the Taz, you have the Shach, you have the Shulchan Aruch Arav, you have all sorts of different codexes of Jewish law, and they all base their opinions on largely on the majority of rabbis in the Gemara. So you'll find that the Gemara will say the halacha is like such and such, and usually you will find that all of the codexes will use the basis of the Gemara to finalize what their opinion was. The problem was then, the Shulchan Aruch was written in the 16th century. So after that came other people who looked at the Shulchan Aruch and either disagreed with that opinion, because after all that was only Rabbi Yosef Karo's opinion of what the halacha was. They would derive a different halacha from somewhere else. The most famous one was Reb Moshe Isserlis, the Ramah, who the Ashkenazim tend to follow. The Sephardim tend to follow the Shulchan Aruch slavishly. The Ramah was a gloss on the Shulchan Aruch. It was a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah, Reb Moshe Isserlis, was, I think, 17th century, I think, Eastern Europe, I think. He is basically who the Ashkenazim follow. And then, of course, came much later examples of Jewish codes of law. And the most famous one for us Ashkenazim will be the Mishnah Brura, which many of you will heard of, which was written by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, also known as the Chofetz Chaim. I'm sure you've all heard of the Chofetz Chaim. He wrote the Mishnah Brura, which was written the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, and that is again based on the Shulchan Aruch, but a gloss on that. It's a commentary on that, and there'll be various different cases. Then along came later ones. The Chazon Ish gave Psak Halacha. Then you've got things like the Igrot Moshe, the writings of Reb Moshe Feinstein, etc., etc. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And then you come to more modern things. For example, probably the most widely used halachic sefer today on Shabbat is called Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata, which was written in the 1970s, 80s, I think, something like that, by Rabbi Yeshua Neuwirth, who was a pupil of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. So when you say, Stanley, when you ask the question, do we always go by the Shulchan Aruch? The answer is no. The Shulchan Aruch just happens to be one of the most famous codexes of Jewish law, which many later commentaries based their opinion on, but especially us Ashkenazim do not always go according to the Shulchan Aruch. It would be more correct, even that wouldn't be correct, but it would be more correct to say that we nearly always go according to the Ramah, the Rav Moshe Isserles commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So why did the Shulchan Aruch get such a fame? And why do we all say, I'm a Shulchan Aruch Jew, I stick to all the Shulchan Aruch? I don't really know. The Shulchan Aruch became the most famous. Why did VHS video supersede Betamax? I don't know. What was better about VHS than Betamax? I don't know. Maybe they just got lucky. What happened? I don't know. Windows versus Mac. Who knows? I don't really know the answer to why the Shulchan Aruch got such prominence over other ones as well. But it's not true to say that we always go according to the Shulchan Aruch. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer to a simple question. Any other comments or questions before we wrap it up? Howard, you've got a finger there that's... Yes.
I'm a bit concerned about the phrase, what is the meaning when the verse says to incline after a multitude to pervert justice? Are you suggesting that that's addressed to or in connection with the court?
Okay, so the pasuk itself, let's just read the pasuk itself. It says, I'll do the pasuk before. Lo tisa shema shav. Do not take my name in vain. Al tashet yadcha im rasha. Do not throw your hand in with an evil person. Liot eid chamas. To be a false witness. So we're talking about testimony. Lo tiyeh acharei rabim l'reot. Do not join a group of evil people, l'reot, to do bad things. In other words, to pervert justice. That's the simple explanation of the pasuk, which is what you read here in the translation. That's the simple meaning of the pasuk, the pshat. The rabbis do a drasha from these words to mean what we were discussing, which means that if you're going to do something bad, i.e. make a decision which is guilty, and we try very hard, the halacha always tries very hard to exonerate people and not to find them guilty. But if you have to do that, that's not good. We don't want to. But if you have to, then you have to do it via a majority. So the simple reading of the pasuk, the pshat of the pasuk, is as you've read it and as it's stated there. But the drash of the pasuk is what the Gemara learned out from those words. Because as you know, there's different layers of meaning in the Torah. There's the simple explanation, the pshat, and then there's drush, which is a deeper layer underneath the simple meaning. So you're right to point that out. It doesn't, the literal explanation, the simple explanation, the pshat of the pasuk is not what we're talking about. But the drush, the deeper layer meaning, is derived from that pasuk.
Sorry.
Howard.
It can't be suggesting that the court could make a decision that perverts the course of justice, surely. Firstly, in Shemos, this is one of many implications to the people. But to suggest that the judges could make a decision that perverts justice seems to me impossible.
Yeah, because what the pasuk says, Lo tieh acharei rabim l'reot, v'lo ta'aneh al riv lintot acharei rabim. And what this has not done, one of the things that I said before you joined a few weeks ago, is that the Gemara expects you to know the whole pasuk. The Gemara just gives you a little quotation, and it's expecting you to know the whole pasuk. Like lahavdil, like last night I said to you, shaken not stirred. right? You all knew instantly that that was a James Bond, something to do with James Bond, and we all know the plot of James Bond, blah, blah, blah. You knew that instantly from those 3 words, shaken, not stirred. The Gemara expects you to know the whole Torah off by heart. So it's only quoted half the pasuk here. Lintot acharei rabim lahatot. What it forgot to tell you was the beginning of the verse, velo taneh al-riv. Don't do such a thing. Okay, so you're quite right. It's telling you not to pervert the course of justice. But because you're actually meant to know that, and we're all meant to know that, it just gives you a few words and points you in the direction of the pasuk, which of course you know right at the beginning of the front of your mind. You instantly know what it's talking about.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
There are 12 tribes. How did 12 divide into 70 and not cause some kind of political uprising when the fact is that somebody was going to get more than the rest? I mean, was there some division of these 70 in some way where people felt secure?
Don't know. And the answer is that the 70 elders had to be people that Moshe chose. And the pasuk says, the pasuk itself says, gather me 70 people, elders of the congregation. So it was Moshe's choice. It was his pick. Yeah, that's what you have. You have that in the States, don't you? The president gets a pick on the court, and then everybody argues whether his pick is allowed. Well, there was no arguing with this. Moshe Rabbeinu got to pick 70 elders. When it came to other things like the Chanukah Tabayit, when they consecrated the Mishkan, and when it came to sending the spies, then it was equally divided across the tribes, one member for each tribe. This was a Moshe Rabbeinu's pick. And I guess the answer is that, some people would have argued with Moshe Rabbeinu. We know that Korach didn't exactly agree with Moshe Rabbeinu's pick. But probably most people would accept that if Moshe Rabbeinu said these are the 70 elders, that they would accept it.
Now, I have one other point. You mentioned all these other commentaries related to the Talmud. This one we're looking at. Where do they fit? Why? Where would is this commentary that we're learning right now? Is that found in another sefer that is not saying the same thing as this one?
No, what we're learning here, Nachum, what we're learning here is pure Gemara. We're just looking at the Gemara words, but you can't learn the Gemara by just reading the words, because as you can see, if you have a look at the screen over here, you can see that some words are in bold and some are not in bold. Let's just try this randomly, this paragraph, just try reading the bold. But doesn't Rabbi Yehoshua accept a court and odd, and isn't it taught Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Yosef Glilo, what the verse said? Doesn't make any sense. You can't do it. You need what I call the fill-in words. The Gemara is written in shorthand. And so what we are doing is we're just learning pure Gemara, but we're filling in the missing words that we're meant to understand without knowing, but without them being written there. And all the commentaries on the Gemara, which if you look at the Vilna Gemara over here, which I'll just put in front of my camera, what we are learning is this stuff in the middle, okay, over here. All these little things at the side, Rashi, Tosfos, all sorts of other different explanations, they are commentaries on this bit. And then at the back of a big boy's Gemara, you've got even more commentaries on the Gemara. We are just scratching the surface of this, literally scratching the surface. Those that learn Gemara all their lives will be going through various commentaries, Rashi, Tosfot, all sorts of different commentaries, and could spend, I mean, we've spent a long time on this because I'm going through all the different words that are coming up and explaining where they come from. But they can spend it when they do it properly, what's called be'iyun, when they do it in detail, they can spend months and months and months on one page of Gemara because they are learning tons and tons of different people's opinions on what that means. And if there's something to learn from that, it is if you, Nachum, ever decide to write a definitive article on absolutely anything, you have to write it with such clarity that there is no need for 150 different explanations of what you actually meant when you wrote it. Because that is the problem with the Gemara. Is that because it's not written in a very clear fashion, it's written in shorthand, there are zillions of different opinions as to what that shorthand means. And that's where people spend all their lives learning the Gemara.
Well, thank you.
Okay, any other comments before we wrap it up? Okay, so tonight is Chag, so I shall wish you Chag Sameach. Let me first of all stop recording, and then I will